everyone. Welcome back to our ISI video channel where we discuss various topics related to international students. As we focus on emotional wellness, we want to visit the topic of culture shock as many students begin to travel again and study outside of their home countries. Joining us today is the lovely Bryanna Davis, who is the International Student Director. She's going to explain a little bit more about culture shock and just how to manage it. Bryanna, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have been working in international education now for over 10 years, so I'm sure that culture shock has come up more than once. Could you start by explaining a little bit about just what culture shock is?
Yes, I'm happy to be joining today, Sally. Thank you for having me. And great question to start us off. So you are correct. Culture shock is a very common occurrence among those who move to a new country, including for international students. And it's really a term used to describe that disoriented or that anxious feeling at arrival in your new location. And culture shock can typically last anywhere from a few days to a few weeks or even sometimes a few months. Now, one item that I do want to point out is that international students can also often experience reverse culture shock, meaning when they go back home, it feels different, not quite the same as whenever they left. And so this means that basically there's going to be another period of adjustment to get back into the swing of things whenever they return home.
Perfect. Interesting. Who is most likely to be impacted by culture shock?
So really anyone who's living outside of their home country can experience culture shock. And so because of this, it's really important for international students to be aware of what culture shock is. So not only are these students moving to a new country, but for many, it's really the first time that they've lived outside of their family household. And so the combination of those can really be very difficult.
Yeah, I could certainly see that, empathize. And what are some of the symptoms that someone with culture shock might be experiencing?
Yeah, really good question. But first, so just as a reminder, at International Student, we are not licensed mental health professionals, and any students that think that they might be experiencing culture shock and that they need additional help, I would suggest that they visit their campus counseling center for further guidance. However, some very common symptoms do typically include sadness, loneliness, anger, irritability, loss of identity, sometimes a lack of confidence or feelings of just being lost in general, obsession with certain things such as cleanliness, or it can even sometimes present in physical symptoms such as aches and pains or maybe even insomnia.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting that you touched on cleanliness too. I think that that's sort of a way to make sure that you have everything in order and feel completely in control of something. And I know that
Exactly.
that's come up in the past. What would you say are some good solutions for combating culture shock aside from cleaning?
Well, first and foremost, know that culture shock is very common. It's normal to experience culture shock. So a few things that can help, according to experts, include basically bringing a few items whenever you do start your international journey. Bring a few items from home. So maybe something that reminds you of your friends or your family or your pets. Some other items include developing a routine. This could be something as simple as establishing the same routes each day to class or visiting your local park every day for lunch. And then one of my personal favorites is continue to remember your reason of why you're doing what you're doing and make sure that you're continuing to explore your new surroundings and not just hide away. But, once again, if it gets to the point where you need to seek help, then seek help. Go to talk to someone. Culture shock, once again, it's extremely common for international students. It's really not something to hide or to be ashamed of. And speaking with someone might really be able to help.
Perfect. Yeah. And just to touch on, like you said, remember why you're there, why you're doing what you're doing. I know that there's a quote. I don't know how to say, I don't know what it is verbatim, but it's something about you're never really growing unless you're challenging yourself, right? So it's good to challenge yourself and face a little bit of uncertainty, I guess, when when going and studying, because you're growing so much as a person. So what are schools doing to help with culture shock?
Yeah, so this really will vary from one school to the next, but many schools will have information that they provide to students with further details on culture shock, along with resources around keeping mental health just in general in a healthy state. Just like our physical health, our mental health is very important, and many campuses know that, and they work really hard to provide these services to students. For example, there might be counseling services available. There might be check-ins after arrival and periodically. And then a few other items that may take place are some more casual things, such as schools developing a buddy system and just other mingling events around campus.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of your insight today. I know that both internationalstudentinsurance.com and International Student have an array of resources related to this topic specifically. So if you have any questions, we encourage you to check out our resources. And then, as Bryanna had mentioned, we're not mental health counselors here, but if you feel like you need to talk to someone, make sure that you reach out to someone on your campus or contact your advisor. Thanks so much for joining us again, and we hope to see you all next time. Bryanna, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.